Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Planet Coaster. Before we dive into the episode, I just want to give a huge thank you to Silverette and Rudy Rankamel for the shout out on their most recent episode of Garuda. Definitely saw a ton of traction to the channel as a result of that, so thank you guys very, very much. Also, am a huge fan of both of you guys, so definitely meant a lot for you to do that. So thank you, and welcome to all of the new subscribers, and welcome back to all my existing subscribers. By now, most of you have probably seen the last episode where I did a time-lapse of the bridge near the monorail station and kind of highlighted how I constructed the Eiffel Tower. And I really liked the format of the episode, so I think that's what I'm going to do going forward, where we have a real-time segment at the beginning, followed by a time-lapse. If you're like me, you really enjoy the time-lapse videos. I'll sit and watch them. I really like them, but not everyone does. And so this is a way where if you're not a fan of that, you kind of get an up-to-date on the park. If you do like the builds, then you can stick around and watch that after the real-time segment. So on the time-lapse, there will be a build of this building, this one, and then the corner building here. Unfortunately, I didn't have the ability to record when I made this structure on the corner, but it's undergone a lot of changes anyway, so most of it would have probably gotten scrapped in editing either way. So first thing I wanted to highlight here was I made some changes on a stream and sort of off camera. Recording on stream, I'm learning, is really, really hard because it's easy to get sidetracked and just talking with people, and sometimes people want to see other things you're working on in the middle of working on a building. So it's not the easiest way to build and record at the same time. But anyway, I did this off camera. It's not uncommon in Paris. If you look at like this shop front here versus the ground floor on this side, it's not uncommon to have different fronts like that on the same building. And so that's something I wanted to capture there. And also, not every shop front in Paris has the limestone. You get this wood here. Some of it's very dark in color like this. I wanted the limestone to still be a prevalent theme, but I also wanted to highlight some of the more interesting colors and things you can find like this here, the brighter colors. You see in some of the patisseries and things like that. And you'll even find arches like this on the ground floor of some buildings. It's difficult to get a lot of variety in this style because if you think about during the Haussmann period of Paris, all of the buildings were under strict guidelines of what they could look like and had to, there's certain elements they had to have. And so I'm sure architects at the time really struggled to get a lot of variety. But the cool thing of that is that's where you see a lot of the detail in the buildings in Paris come through, is that's where the architects had the ability to sort of add their own creative freedoms and creative liberties into the buildings. And so I tried to capture that here. I did use a lot of the same design features. Like if you look at this here, let's see. If you look at this here, there's like these little signs that I've used. So I put them back to back, or I guess front to front this way, and then I overlapped them in this building. So just something very subtle with the same piece where you can get it to look a little bit different. There are certain things that I definitely repeated, like I used a lot of these awnings here, but they just fit really well, and they give the appearance like what you would expect, when you see photos of Paris. So yeah, I'm okay with doing some of the things over and over again. I don't want to go around the corner too much because there's some buildings there that I copied over from the other side of the main street that I don't want you to see. But the inspiration for this building was, especially this room right here, I wanted it to be a very large window because this is going to be a hotel within the park. Not a huge one, obviously, but a hotel nonetheless. And I wanted it to have an awesome view of the Eiffel Tower, the river, and also the monorail station. So that was the inspiration there. I'll show you a quick shot of it at night. Now, some of these buildings are probably a little bit overlit, but there are certain corners of Paris, especially along the Seine, where the entire building is lit up like this. So it's not completely unrealistic, and considering that most theme parks go a little bit over the top on some things and some design tropes, I'm okay with that. So I'll probably tweak some of it, make the shader a little bit darker on a couple of the lights, but overall I think it definitely captures the vibe of Paris. And into a tree there. In the next episode, I will I'll definitely go into more detail and give you a wider shot of the entire area, because I won't be trying to hide anything. But yeah, that's that side at night. And then real quick I'll show you the backstage area. So some of these buildings are available in my workshop, like this loading dock and the trash compactor and the tractor trailer. All of those are on my workshop. I'll put links in the description for you guys, as well as these work trucks. These were inspired by those little tiny trucks that you see in a lot of theme parks, a lot of parks in general, where they can drive along footpaths and not take up a huge presence and huge amount of space, but at the same time they have a pretty decent sized flatbed where they can carry around a lot of stuff. This one was just supposed to be like a general truck that would take around things to your shops, a gardening truck, and then this is supposed to be just general maintenance, where with grass clippings and trash bags and some rocks and things like that. So that's also available in the workshop. This building I'm working on doing an interior for right now. So if you go inside the loading dock, there is a deliveries area, and I haven't done the interior on that yet, but that's planned. And then there's a freight elevator. And then if we go into this building, I'll be finishing this area here as well, but just haven't quite gotten to it yet. And then we go downstairs. There's this will be a storage area with some shelving. That freight elevator will come down right here, so I just need to make a door for it. And then this tunnel goes underneath the main street to the other side of the backstage. And this will probably be an employee break area or something like that, with another freight elevator to get things up to the other side of the main street. This will be a room, I haven't decided yet, probably offices or something. And then more storage stuff here. So still need to do a lot of work on this, but hopefully in the next video there will be more detail on this side of the backstage. So I posted my park to Shy Guy World, which if you're not familiar with, you should definitely check out, especially if you're a theme park enthusiast. There's a lot of very passionate, talented people there, and it's just a cool community. So check that out. But one of the suggestions that I got on there, which I kind of agree with, is that the shop fronts here kind of break the immersion of a theme park, and that maybe it would be better if I put these inside of the building and had doors instead. And that's something that I'm not going to do for now, just for time's sake. I don't even have a ride in this park yet, so I need to kind of do some of that stuff, but over time that's something I'll work on doing. And on this side of the main street, I've actually tried to kind of start tackling that as well. This doesn't spoil too much about that building, but worked on a floor here. So something that is on my mind, and I'm going to try to start implementing going forward. But also with my concern on part count, it may not be something that I can really do for now. I might have to just put that on hold for a while. So anyway, that's pretty much it for the real-time segment here. So we'll go back to the side of the main street. Again, the time lapse is going to be pretty much these buildings here. I don't record any of the planting of the trees or the planters or anything like that. It's just pretty much the buildings. So for those of you who do not like to sit through time lapses, thank you so much for watching the episode. Really appreciate it. And for those of you that are like me and like to nerd out on those things, then I will see you over on the time lapse segment. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next episode. And welcome into the time lapse if you decided to stick around. So yeah, this is the first building of the time lapse. I wanted to add some variety, like I was kind of talking about in the real time segment, and just any way I could. So sometimes that means changing the roof color or the material in this case. I wanted to kind of get the vibe of some of the metal roofs that you see in Paris as well. I believe that this is obviously like a newer feature. I don't think this was something that was permissible during the Haussmann period. But yeah, I think it's interesting. It adds, like I said, it just adds some variety, and it's also kind of selfishly, it's also a lot less detail typically on these style of buildings, and that was helpful to kind of fill this middle area of this side of the main street. So boxy dormer windows on top, and then there's kind of those skylight windows up above that that I think really add a unique feature, and definitely you see in a lot of buildings in Paris. So the time lapse here is going to be a little choppy in terms of like editing. I'm going to cut some stuff out because unfortunately with this type of build, there's a lot of trial and error. I mean, I'm trying to get very specific pieces to do specific things, and so a lot of times I'll build for like 3 minutes in the time lapse and then completely delete all of it. So there's a lot of that where I'm taking it out and replacing it with other things and just adding to it. So as the camera's kind of flying around here, if you look to the building to the right, I don't know if you'll get a good enough shot of it during this time lapse, but you can kind of see versus the real time what it used to look like. I definitely had more of the similar shop front that you're going to see in the building I'm working on here, where it's just the shop kind of sitting there with a hole in the wall. And I really like, even though that's technically still what's there with the wooden facade, I think it definitely captures more of that look of Paris. And so as I kind of progressed, I was learning new things, finding new source material. And I know I say this all the time, but honestly, anything you're building, any subject matter, whatever, the more source imagery you have, the better that things are going to turn out, because there's only so much you can remember off the top of your head. There's only so much you can recall from, like for me, if I were to try to do something with like Asian architecture, for example, like I've seen samurai movies, I've seen photos of Asian countries, but I wouldn't be able to build anything off the top of my head based on just those memories. I need photo evidence. So, anything you're doing, no matter what, just even if you're trying to build a roller coaster, so in the next episode, there will be the other side of the main street. But in real life, I've already started working on the first coaster of the park. And so, I'm still not great at building coasters. I'm not on the level of, like a Silverette or a Friedbear, where they're, coaster experts. But, looking at existing coasters, writing POVs on YouTube, things like that can be a tremendous help in, mimicking different layouts and things like that. I mean, you don't have to copy layouts exactly to build a good coaster, but you can definitely take things from certain styles of coasters and try to mimic them. So and then do some things to try to make it your own. So you don't have to copy it exactly, but you can definitely use things as inspiration. So I think that goes for, like I said, buildings or rides, or even theming flat rides. There's certainly nothing wrong with doing that. So one of the sort of design things that I kind of use over and over again is those custom wrought iron railings on those balconies there. It adds a ton to the piece count, but they just look so good. And I tried not to use them, or overuse them, I should say. But I don't think I succeeded in that. I think once I kind of started doing it, I think I kind of continued that theme throughout a lot of the buildings, but tried to mix it up in different ways that didn't look exactly the same on each building. So, and actually I meant to reference this when I was editing this time lapse. I noticed it, but there was a part in this building where I actually want to go back and change something, and it's actually those 3 windows right above there, that middle sort of balcony with the railing. I think I'm going to delete that. That's another sort of design feature you'll see in a lot of Parisian buildings, where not every building has, not every window has a balcony to it. Sometimes you'll space it out and allow some negative space in between, and that can add, just make it a little more interesting and not so repetitive. So I think I might actually go back and and change that. It was something that I noticed as I was working on the editing of the time lapse. So yeah, here I'm just copying over. I didn't keep a lot of the detail on the back side of these buildings for the backstage area, just because theoretically in real life you wouldn't be able to see it. These buildings are a little different because they're so tall that chances are if you're in another area in the park, even if you can't see the backstage area on the ground level, you'd be able to see the tops of these buildings. So from that standpoint, I probably should have added some more detail, but just from the sake of time and for the sake of part count, I don't think it's a huge issue to not have a ton of detail on there. And from a realism standpoint, so first of all, this park is insane. Like, if this was ever built in real life, it would be, incredibly expensive to do. But that being the case, even though it would be expensive, there would still be areas where they would cut costs, and that would be one of them. They wouldn't spend a ton of money trying to theme the backside of these buildings in addition to the front. And I kind of try to carry that through in the backstage area, like you saw in the real time, like the underground area and the tunnel, and even what will probably be the sort of employee break area or whatever is all concrete. And to me, that's very much realistic, and it's kind of Disney-esque, where you have so much that goes on behind the scenes that you don't even see and you're not intended to see when you're a guest in the park. But they have tunnels everywhere. They do their best to keep the immersion there, where you're not noticing the kind of behind the scenes things that are taking place. And so, if you're going to spend the kind of money that it would cost to build a park like this, then certainly you're going to be focused on, maintaining the illusion that you're in Paris and hiding as much of the sort of activity that's required to run the park as you can. And so that's sort of where my head was at when I was going through building all of this. And so this building here, I wanted to make it a little bit wider. So when I was designing the main street, I wanted to have buildings that had different widths, and then I wanted to vary the heights a lot too, so that it didn't all just look kind of like one building. Even though there are sort of super blocks in Paris where you could have a quarter of it that is literally the same building, and it has the same feature for a good portion of it. So that it wouldn't be completely unrealistic to do that, but I just wanted to have some variety, and that if you were like breezing through this, or if you were in another other side of the river from the park main street, that it would just look just if you were kind of just glancing and weren't really paying close attention, it would have the feel of Paris. So that's what I was going for there. And yeah, so here's an example of just trial and error. And sorry, you notice we skipped ahead there. There was a lot of trial and error stuff that I did that I ended up not using, and even this I end up scrapping. So apologies for the redundant stuff that's not going to end up being there. But the reason I left this in is because I used that awning as a template. I ended up making my own awnings, and that's just because like the in-game ones are beautiful and they look great, but they're clearly designed to just fit over a shop front, just one of them. And you'll notice that those kind of ridges there don't really lend themselves very well to duplicating and turning it into a larger awning. So I used the angle, and then I just used the wooden pillars to create that same pattern. And then, so this I do keep, but then I end up changing the colors completely. So I think I cut that out. Excuse me. I think I cut that out, and then we're gonna flash forward here because I completely redo this bottom area as well. So right now, the kind of in between the windows area are those castle pieces. I can't remember what they're called, but they're like a castle detail piece, and so I replaced those with doors. So there's are windows actually. In this building, it's windows. On the other cafe with the sort of black looking wood, those are doors, the back side of wooden doors. And then on the bottom of this one, there's some wooden windows that have a stone topper to them. And that's what I used here. So I wanted to give it kind of a mix of the two. So you have the wood, obviously, that's the pink, or not pink, but like, I don't know, I'm not good at color names, fuchsia, I guess. So you have that one, and then you have the door that adds a little bit of, or the window that adds a little bit of the stone accent as well. And one thing too that I'll just point out as the camera's kind of flying around here, is that most of the time I just copy down the windows as a reference point. I don't actually keep them. I usually try to, like I said, get some variety and replace them with something else, but it is helpful to just be able to copy them all down and maintain that symmetry that you find in a lot of the Parisian buildings. So yeah, like here you can see me changing them around, and I think I end up going with that one. Maybe no, I thought I went, yeah, so yeah, I go with that one. I thought I did. see, this is why I edit so much stuff out, because I literally changed my mind like 4 times right there. So yeah, then I think I used the arched shape window down here below. Yeah. So again, just having variety, I think, adds some more interesting dynamics to the building, where essentially you're really just repeating the same thing. And then for the signage above the patisserie, I just used, the flattest signs I could find in the game. They're like the Western signs that don't have any like border to them or any edge to them, and sunk those into some wooden beams so that all that was showing up was the lettering, and then that little design detail as well. So yeah, nothing necessarily groundbreaking there. I'm always blown away by some of the signs that people make, like Masked Bandit from the Bro Coaster series. Is some of the signs he makes I would love to just go in one of his parks and tear apart the buildings to figure out how he's making the signs, because and other people too, but I always love the signs where it looks like it's all kinds of different text and there's different angles, and I don't know, they're just very interesting. So I'm trying to get better at the signage part of it, but definitely there are some people next level sign makers in the community. So here we're working on the dome for the corner building, and this is one of my favorite domes. Oh, well, I always say that, but then with every single new one I make, it's like that one becomes my new favorite. So you'll see in the next episode, there's one, and some of you already saw it on the stream, but there's one that I worked on that it probably took me conservatively 10 hours to make, just the dome. And I changed, it's partly just because I changed so much over and over on it. So it's not like the process was that hard. Like you can see here, I'm just using the same process you can find in Silverette's dome tutorial. Like I did the same thing on the other dome, but I just changed so much about it over and over again that it just took so much time, and it was a really, really challenging dome to duplicate. So you'll see that in the next episode. But this along with I'll point them out in the real-time segments on the next episode, which ones are my favorite, but this one, and then there's like 2 others that I like the most. So which I guess there's only 4, so that's kind of ridiculous to have 3 of the 4. But anyway, this is my new favorite piece, that door that I think it's a part of the fairy tale set, that just has the ornate details around the outside of it. So if you use just those details and sync other stuff in around them, you can give the illusion that there's like some carvings or things like that, some border detail to whatever you're outlining. So I've used that for this corner window here. I've used it on doors. I've used it on other windows. I've actually taken just a piece of it and sunk it into the wall so that it looks like just kind of an accent detail as well, which I'll show you in the next episode. But it's a really versatile piece. and it's probably the next one that I'm going to overuse, along with that sign that has the detail on it. So yeah, so I think in this time lapse you actually see me copy around the top section to the other side, and then I sort of cut out as I'm copying over the bottom section. But at the end of the video, there will be a time lapse. Jesus, not time lapse. Cinematic. God, there will be so. I know I get all over the place sometimes in my commentaries. This is a quick sidebar. Mad props to everyone who does these videos and your native language is not English, because I struggle sometimes, and English is my native language, so I can't even imagine trying to think of the English words of what you're trying to say at the same time. So anyway, that's a completely random tangent like I always do, but mad props. So I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, at the end there will be some cinematics for you to check out as sort of an outro, and you'll see more of that side of the building there. And yeah, one of the things that I point out too here in this section is that the window boxes can really help you hide a lot. So you'll notice before I put them there that there's sort of a gap between the window and that ledge, and adding the window boxes just helps you cover up a lot of that detail that would otherwise be exposed. So I'm a big fan of using them for that. And even to the building to the right, since we're on that topic, those balconies there that are just to the right of the screen, I sunk some window boxes down into that to hide what would otherwise be some exposed detail I didn't want anyone to see. And so it's not sometimes even myself, I get caught in the habit of trying to hide everything that I don't want to be seen while I'm like working on it, when in reality I could just go back later on and put something else there to hide it, and it wouldn't take as much work or as much time. So that's a perfect example of that. I would just encourage you, use the window boxes to hide up little flaws that you don't want anyone to see. Versus this, where I'm using that wooden balcony to hide those signs. So, and sidebar, this was all done before the update. And so some of those wooden balcony railings I've actually replaced with the new metal ones that are in the game, which are awesome, by the way. Like I really like the one that's sort of like a detailed Planet Coaster logo, although I wish that it didn't have the logo on it, just for realism purposes, but it's fine. And then the one that has sort of the spikes on it that are super detailed, I like as well. And then just the plain black ones, or I guess you can change the color, but the plain just square railings as well. I replaced a lot of the wooden ones with those, just because it seemed more realistic and it wasn't as difficult to hide. Like here I'm trying to hide the signs that are sticking below that ledge. So here I use that shop front to, not shop front, that God, what are those called? The shop decoration, to give the illusion of the dormer. And the bonus of that is that the parts that stick down below that ledge created some nice detail on that story below. And so I was really happy with how that turned out. And I ended up using a door, a pretty large door, I think, to complete the dormer look here. So yeah, there's that detail with that fairy tale door. And then, then I used that door to sort of fill in the detail of the dormer. And honestly, those are probably too big for that story of the building. Like in reality, the dormers would probably be much smaller that high up, especially if I was trying to create the illusion of height. I know Silverette always talks about that, where in a lot of theme park design, and especially in Disney, where things aren't as tall as they appear, but they appear to be that tall because of the way it's been designed, where things get smaller the farther up you go, and so naturally your mind kind of fills in the gap and pieces it together, and it makes it look taller than it actually is. So from that standpoint, those are not realistic, but from a design standpoint, I like how they look. And it also, again, created additional detail down below to kind of fill in the gaps on the wall. The corner buildings, I tried to make the most detailed. The buildings sort of in the middle of the main street, I wasn't as concerned about, just because, one, I knew that there was going to be trees there, and two, the corners are sort of the stars, and you really see them from a lot of different areas of the park. And so I wanted to make sure those were the most detailed. Sorry, just getting a drink of water. So yeah, those doors right there are the exact ones that I used for the woodwork on the other two buildings that I was talking about earlier. And this is actually, I can't remember what building inspired these archways. There's a pretty large building that's on the other side of the road from the Louvre that has this feature. The difference is that there's sort of a walkway behind them and then the glass shop front. So I kind of, that's an example like I talked about earlier when you're using resource or reference material. Take the things you like, but don't feel like you have to stick to it exactly. And a lot of times for me, that means that I have to tweak stuff off camera because it just doesn't look right. But for the most part, it gives you a great starting point. And then here I'm just using the pillars to add some more detail and kind of frame up the next area where I'm going to add windows to. So I did smaller ones there, and I believe I sink a larger one in later on to kind of finish off that second story there. And then here, just changing the windows up. I don't think I ended up keeping that because that would have been a crazy amount of detail to go in and add those. Yeah, I think I kept it pretty simple for this second story here. And then after this, it's just copying things around. I'm still working on a sign for this building because, like I said, I want it to be a hotel. And I haven't figured out what to name it yet. So if you have any suggestions for a name, leave a comment for that below. That would be awesome. And I am planning on, as appreciation for Silverette and Rudy, I am planning on immortalizing them somehow in the park here. So we'll see what that entails in the future. But yeah, anyway, I'm about out of time lapse. So thank you guys so much for sticking with me this long. And I know it's a little bit of a longer episode this week. Really appreciate all the support. Again, welcome to all of the new subscribers, and thank you to all of my existing subscribers. I appreciate your time and your support. I hope everyone has a fantastic weekend. Best way to stay in touch with me is on Twitter. It's at Ruble_Trillions. You can find a link to that in the description. I'm always announcing my streams and new videos, and I typically tweet out quite a few teaser photos as well. So anyway, thanks guys. Really appreciate it. Have a good one.